Let's get right to it, folks. In Georgia, a federal judge ruled today that Georgia's exact match rules for voter registration will not apply for Tuesday's election. That will allow people to vote who have their voter registration held up. All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. Hey, folks, if you're looking for a hot new investment opportunity, I have two things I want you to think about: illegal marijuana and crowdfunding. Now, you just let that sink in for a second. Our friends at Transatlantic Real Estate have created a unique opportunity for everyday investors like you to get in the game for a minimum of $300 or $10,000, 50 grand, or even $100,000. You can get in where you want to fit in. Now, typically, it takes millions, if not billions, to invest in the legal marijuana industry, and it can be pretty risky trying to establish market share. However, Transatlantic Real Estate is taking a different approach. They buy the land that supports marijuana grow operations and lease it to licensed, high-paying tenants. Now, imagine being a landlord to a licensed marijuana farm. With the prospects of further legalization and changing public perceptions about marijuana, some investors could end up making serious money over the next several years. The best part is they are using crowdfunding, so you can get in now before they take the company public. If you want to find out more, go to marijuanastock.org. That's marijuanastock.org to get in now. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video. Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, they of course were part of a coalition that filed a suit against Secretary of State Brian Kemp, who is a Republican running for governor of Georgia. Of course, the Lawyers Committee, they also are managing a war room to combat last-minute attempts at voter suppression. Joining us right now is Dorian Spence. He is the Director of Special Litigation and Advocacy for the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. Dorian, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Roland?
I'm doing great. First and foremost, I mean, look, you guys have been targeting so many different people, taking them to court. Our civil rights lawyers are critically important. And it amazes me, I keep having all these black Republicans come on the show denying voter suppression. But the reality is what you see in Georgia and other places, Republicans desperately want to decrease voter turnout to make it easier for them to win. And this case is a huge victory for the Lawyers Committee and the other groups in the coalition.
Absolutely. And this case doesn't just start this year. It actually goes back to 2014 when Stacey Abrams put together a nonprofit that the sole purpose was to register 100,000 African-American and low-income people to vote. And we saw back then 50,000 of those people didn't make it onto the rolls. What we found out during our investigation was that minor discrepancies on their voter registration applications were bumping them from the system. So they got caught in this no man's land of pending on their voter registration status. Today, a judge on a similar issue found that 3,000 people were trapped in that same issue of pending status. And he basically said that they will be able to vote in this election.
And look, I mean, this is critical because this thing has been going back and forth when it comes to these folks. And of course, he has been saying, "Oh, look, this is just standard." But the reality is, what he did in this case, he tried this same crap in the last election, was slapped down by a federal judge, and the legislature, they actually made it law.
Right. Right. And we see these attacks on the right to vote, the fundamental right to vote across the country. This isn't the only state that's trying suppressive tactics. We see it in Ohio with secretaries of states purging the rolls of eligible voters just because they've been inactive for one election cycle. We see it in Texas where there are voting machines switching the votes of eligible voters. We saw it in North Carolina. We just heard today, Roland, in North Carolina, a glitch in the computer system almost kicked 400 voters off the rolls. We have to understand that the precious right to vote is under attack at every turn, And it just so happens, and you know as well as I do, when I say just so happens, I say that sarcastically, that it most often affects people of color, people from our community. So we have to stay ever vigilant. We have to make sure that we know our status before election season, and even throughout election season, make sure that we stay engaged and exercise our right to vote.
Dorian, let's talk about this war room. Exactly what does it entail, and what are you looking for between now and Election Day?
Absolutely. So The Lawyers Committee spearheads a coalition of organizations, civil rights organizations, civic engagement organizations called Election Protection. And we have been active for the past 14 years with recruiting volunteers, both legal and non-legal, to protect the fundamental right to vote. Now, when we talk about protecting the fundamental right to vote, we don't just mean for black people, we don't just mean for white people, we mean for everyone. If you are eligible to cast a ballot, we will do everything in our power to make sure that you cast that ballot on Election Day. And what that looks like is that we have field programs in 28 states. We have over 6,000 volunteers across the country, and we have over 1,000 trained attorneys on the phone waiting for your call if you run into problems on Election Day. That problem could be as small as, I don't know where my polling location is, or I can't remember if I'm registered to vote, to something as big as, I know that I'm registered to vote, I have my voter registration card, and they still won't let me vote. We have rapid response programs or infrastructure in place to get to the bottom of all of those problems. So for all of your viewers, if you run into problems either on Election Day or even now, you can call 1-866-OUR-VOTE. Once again, that's 1-866-OUR-VOTE to get help. And we introduced a little wrinkle this year. We also have a text feature as well. If you run into problems at the polls, either now through Election Day, you can text 97779 to get the help you need.
All right, then, Dorian, we surely appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Thanks for all the hard work for the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law.
Absolutely, Roland. It's always a pleasure.